Whoop, 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 whoop. Nam paint! What's up, Smashlings? Nam here. So in this video, I just wanted to show you how I painted my 2-1B Rebel Medic Droid for my Rebel army. This is one of the last 2 figures that I have for that army, after which it is done! I hope you enjoyed the video. To be honest, this model is very plain in the end, but I actually am pretty happy with how it turned out, so I hope you enjoy. So starting off with my primed model, I went in first with a layer of speed paint. The speed paint I primarily focused onto the ridged areas around the torso and on the legs. And I did this particularly because the Holy White speed paint is actually more of kind of an off gray, but the way the speed paint works, it still leaves the white of the primer on those raised ridges and lets the gray pigments settle in. So this way I could have some definition and not lose the detail, and then when I would come through with a wash, it would be nice, pop out ridge details. After the layer of speed paint, I moved on to my base tones. One thing I have been really big about with this army especially is consistency. All of my models use the same set of tones, and despite the fact that this is a droid, I really wanted to make sure I had a consistent army. So instead of going for a nice metal finish like you see a lot of the 2-1B droids painted, where they're kind of a washed out or a dirtied up metal, I actually chose to go with a tan that is the same tan used in my Rebel army. All of this is going to go on the flat plates of the model, as well as the model's head. So if you've watched my previous video where I painted my Rebel R5 Astromech, you can kind of see this level of just attention to consistency in that model as well. Something that has just really irked me is that the Rebels, as we know them in canon, are a guerrilla force. So it doesn't make very much sense that they would have, especially their medics or their astromechs, which are essentially scouters, in metal or in something that's going to draw a lot of attention to themselves. So this is why I am so focused on making sure that the droids in my army look like they belong on a battlefield with this army. You'll notice that I didn't work the paint into any of the cracks or crevices dividing the plates on the model, and I did that specifically because I knew I was coming in with a very dark wash after this, so I didn't think it necessary at all to put any paint in there. The wash would settle and provide nice contrast. With the plates fully coated, I moved on to the arms and the legs portions, which would be powder coated metal. For this, I still wanted a tone that would match with the plates, so I mixed sort of a warm toned gray. Moving on to the eyes of the model, these droids are usually portrayed with sort of amber or yellowish lights in their eyes, but I decided that that was a little bit too much of that kind of tannish, yellowish color tone for this model, so I decided that this droid was going to have pretty bright green lights for his eyes. To do that, I went in first with a very bright green and just small dots on the actual raised eye portion of the model. And on top of that, after it had dried, I went through with the green tone quick shade, which is pretty dark. Now that green tone wash does tend to settle and take over the actual little raised eye center bits. So after applying it, while it was still wet, I took my brush and a paper towel, and I was just carefully working back the wash and wiping it off on the towel, and then working it back and wiping it off, so that I would still have that nice raised little center to the light. And once that was clear, I went back through with just a tiny bit more of the really bright green, just to make sure his eyes would pop. Next, I went over the entire model with a dark gray wash. I had actually done some highlighting, but it turns out that the wash completely washed it out. And when I saw the final product, I wasn't really invested in the highlights anyways. I really liked the way it turned out. But the purpose of this wash was just to really grunge him up and look like this was a droid that had been on a battlefield and had seen some stuff. So I'm pretty happy with the final result that I got. Unfortunately, I did most of this painting off camera once again. So yeah, sorry about that. So finally, as the finishing touch, I still wanted to have some bright, shining metal bits and bobs here and there, just to sort of bring in the fact that this is a droid, it is made of metal, and to break up this sort of tan and gray silhouette that we had. So for that, I went through with a nice shining silver metallic paint and just really picked through some little details, the cog on his chest, the banding on his mask, and sort of the bolts that would hold him together. And that's it. That's a finished droid. Now, he's quite plain, but to be honest, again, I don't think it makes very much sense to have your medic unit to be bright and flashy and fresh and attract attention to itself. So despite the fact that the model is pretty plain, I'm pretty happy with it, and I do hold it alongside some of my other rebel commandos so that you can sort of see that he does match the army, which is something that I'm super dedicated to.